For a while, it was really common to see people use a very particular argument that I think is super stinky when it comes to reviews for movies and games. If someone critiqued a game or a movie, you would oftentimes find some very enthusiastic warriors going to bat for this multi-million-dollar property in order to fight for its honor, doing PR for free for them so they can continue to fondle their balls. And one of the go-to strategies in their bag of tricks while melting down that someone didn't like something they liked would be, oh, let's see you do better then. Oh, you didn't like this? I saw you criticize this? Oh, where's your resume? You must have done better, right, to have this opinion? Let me see, what have you done that's so much better? And every single time I'd roll my eyes because it's just so pathetic. It's a weak-ass argument. You don't need to have created something of higher quality to have an opinion on something that you just consumed. The same way that you don't need to be a professional basketball player to have an opinion on how a game went down. It's so fucking stupid, and luckily we've finally evolved past that point. I don't see that as much these days, but it's always been interesting food for thought. What would happen if a movie critic actually did make a movie themselves? What would that look like? Would it be good? And this is the first, to my knowledge, at least to this scale, of that very phenomenon happening. A huge YouTube movie reviewer named Chris Stuckman, whom I imagine many of you have heard that name before, maybe you've even been Stuckmanized at some point, has now just had his first foray into directing his own feature film called Shelby Oaks. He's made his directorial debut on the big screen. It's just come out, I just watched it, so I want to give you my review of it. Now, I'll mention this at the top, I have watched many Chris Stuckman reviews in the past, not so much in modern times because since becoming a filmmaker himself, he seems far more hesitant to actually criticize movies and is instead focused on just the positives of them, which is not really my cup of tea. If I'm watching a review of something, I want to know the pros and the cons. I want to know the positives and negatives. Nothing's perfect, and I want to know what worked and what didn't. Now, it's of course entirely his call to make with his channel there. It's just, like I said, not typically what I've been looking for in reviews, but that doesn't mean I dislike Chris Stuckman, and I'm more than happy to pay tickets here to go see his film and show some support for taking this big leap into this new field here. But the reason I mention this at the top is because, as I've said before, I do my best not to let any extenuating factors influence my view of the film. I try not to let any of these kind of biases into my review of a movie, so I'll be looking at Shelby Oaks on its own merit, on its own two legs, setting everything else aside. So, Shelby Oaks, is it good? It's fine, and at times, pretty good. Most of what works is front-loaded in the beginning. Like, the first 35 minutes of this film, I was really enjoying it. I thought it was an interesting premise they were setting up. It's all found footage that I thought was done very well. And then, after, like, the first 35-ish minutes of the movie, it then just falls into horror movie tropes and walks the same path millions of other horror movies have come through fucking fee-fi-fo-fumming and stomping around on. And it just becomes very underwhelming. It's disappointing given how effective I think the first 30-ish minutes were of getting you interested in what's going on here and invested in it. And then it just becomes very standard horror movie stuff all the way down to CG dogs, hellhounds. It's just, I don't know, that was pretty lackluster. Anyway, the beginning of this film is a found footage piece. That's not the entirety of the film, it just begins with found footage, and it's very clearly inspired by Lake Mungo, which is something I know Chris Stuckman has glazed quite a bit in the past. I've watched Lake Mungo, and this is, I guess, one of my hotter horror takes. I really didn't like it very much, but I actually think the found footage pieces that Chris Stuckman uses in Shelby Oaks are good. I actually think that was some of the best parts of this movie. It starts by telling you this story, giving you the foundation about this group called the Paranormal Paranoids, which is a group of friends that had a YouTube channel in 2008, and they went on all these wacky, wild adventures, trying to capture paranormal shit, and every time they went out, they happened to catch some really freaky, unexplainable paranormal activity. And a lot of people thought they were phonies and fakes, but then in their final investigation, they went to Shelby Oaks, and none of them ever came back. We're going to be getting into spoilers for this review now. So now it's your spoiler warning. Okay, now you've been warned. We're back. 3 of them are murdered. This is established very early in the film. There's footage of it. 3 of their bodies are found. They are mutilated. They're dead. But Riley, the host, like the face of Paranormal Paranoids, was not amongst those bodies. So she's still missing. And it's been a mystery that's plagued the world ever since. Fast forward 12 years into the future, and we meet Mia, who is Riley's sister. And she's doing an interview telling the story of Riley, how she had these nightmares and these dreams of this man in the window when she was growing up, and it was terrifying stuff. She always had this, like, you know, really deep connection to some unexplainable stuff. And while giving this interview, telling the camera about Riley, someone knocks at the door, and we meet a guy who says, "She finally let me free," and then he shoots himself in the head right in front of Mia, and had a tape that said Shelby Oaks, which gives her the missing pieces of the puzzle to try and finally find her sister. I was drawn in here by the premise. I think the found footage elements were done well enough to keep it pretty tense, and there was a surprising amount of jump scares in here, like a good dollop of jump scares, especially early on, which I wasn't expecting. And it's all, you know, well done. I do think for the film's budget, it is impressively shot. It doesn't look like an extremely low-budget film. This doesn't look out of place amongst the numerous horror films that get farted out by the big studios that have millions of dollars in their budget. So it was filmed well. The main character's performance, Mia, I thought was also well done. And like I said, the concept was interesting. It drew me in. But once she pieces it together and goes back to Shelby Oaks, I really think it loses all of its luster. Now when she gets there, it devolves into very standard horror movie cliches, where she gets to Shelby Oaks, and immediately she's seeing hellhounds. So there's some dogs around. Then it turns out it's a demon. It's all demon-based. It's an incubus. Then you start seeing big, spooky devil guy in the background sometimes, and he's fucking yoked, like he's really jacked. It's big demon guy. And he's the one that's been wreaking havoc on Shelby Oaks and, you know, keeping Riley held captive with an older, creepy woman who lives in a trailer. Or, well, I guess it's not like a trailer, but lives in like a small cabin near Shelby Oaks, and that's where Mia ends up. I just would have liked to see it go a different route. I thought it was going in a different direction with how they were setting it up in the found footage. So when you get to this big reveal about it just being a demon who has hellhound guards, it's kind of underwhelming. Especially because they then just fully vomit everything to you. They explain everything about what was happening and why, you know, Shelby Oaks is the way that it is, and why Riley's been held captive here in this old woman's basement, the very cliche horror movie old woman. And it even does one of my least favorite things in all horror movies, where it has like the demon, of course, because that, I guess, is just the staple in all horror movies now. And then it also adds the force, where it's throwing people around with force pushes and stuff like that. So the old woman, whom the incubus, you know, has control over, you know, starts lifting up Riley and slamming her down, and then force pushing Mia. Like, I really can't stand that. That is a big pet peeve of mine in horror movies. And then they followed up with a 1-2 punch of another pet peeve of mine, where main character makes an inexplicably stupid decision. Like, she had made many bad decisions going into the second half of the film, and then at the end, she is witnessing this baby be cursed with blood ritual magic and a demon, that she is fully, visibly seeing all of this unfold, and then once the lady dies from the blood loss after the ritual and the demon now disappears, presumably into the baby, Mia then goes up to the baby and is like really excited, like, "Oh, a new baby! Well, come on, mister, we're taking you home." And it's fucking, it's unhinged. Like, what do you mean? You just, what? I actually couldn't believe that. And they tried to set up, like, Mia wanting to be a mother so badly earlier in the film, but they also set up that she doesn't like demons. Like, she is very weary of, like, this kind of shit. She is a believer in it. So even though she, like, really wants a baby, I don't think she would necessarily want the spawn of Satan as the baby that she takes home. It was so odd to me. Unless, like, the blood magic, like, brainwashed her or something. Like, because she does rub her hand over pictures of Mia, so maybe it's implying that she's being mind controlled, but that doesn't really come across because she doesn't ever really seem mind controlled because she still has her own free will intact, which is evident in the next couple of scenes that come up. Like I said, really, the last half of this movie, and especially like the last fucking 10 or 15 minutes, I think just goes like Insano style in a bad way. Like, it just feels so underwhelming to see a film that sets up genuine intrigue with the found footage stuff, with an interesting premise and concept, lead to just your very standard demon showdown type thing where it just gets kind of goofy, especially like the ending. Big spoilers here. I've already given you a spoiler warning, but like this is the actual like final scene. He does get Riley home with the demon baby. Riley tries to kill the demon baby. Mia, in trying to defend the baby, shoves her out the window. She survives the fall out the window that had been cracking her whole life because of the incubus. And I thought there was going to be like some big meaning there. She flies out the window. She survives that fall and then gets mauled and murdered, mutilated by the dogs. It feels really out of nowhere, and it really reminded me of how Wish Upon ended, which is one of my least favorite horror films ever made. That, to this date, is still one of the lowest moist meter ratings I ever gave. Wish Upon ends in a similar fashion where it's supposed to like shock the viewer by subverting expectations, where she just randomly gets hit by a car. That same thing is kind of what happens here, where she just randomly gets pushed out that window and then mauled by the hellhounds. It's like, I don't know, kind of a weird decision to have it build to that. Especially when you consider that Riley has been raped and tortured for 12 years in that household by this demon, forced to carry numerous unsuccessful births, and then he finally gets free, only to get pushed out the window and mauled by dogs, like, instantly. I don't know, it just, that really was an odd choice for, like, the actual end. They then also try another big reveal about how Mia was actually the intended target this whole time to raise the baby. I just don't think these plot points were landing the way they wanted to, and they were really trying to put a lot of, like, shocking things here at the end that I don't think worked. The movie was at its best when it was making you focus on this footage from Riley's camera to try and piece together, like, what might have happened. Oh, am I seeing something over there? Or what's that? Like, you having to pay attention and having to think, like, wondering what's going on here. And then the second half, it's just completely abandons that and just is like, here's a hellhound dog jump scare. Here's demon guy. Here's creepy old lady with weird eyes, because demons got her. Also, by the way, that old lady, she wasn't very far outside of Shelby Oaks. Like, she was still, like, right on the outskirts. How the fuck would the authorities have never found that place, by the way? Riley was in the basement of that place for 12 years. How did authorities never find that building? I don't know if I missed something or what, but Mia was able to find it pretty quickly from the amusement park. It did not take her that long. By following a hellhound, by the way. A hellhound that nearly mauled her to death at the prison just like 3 minutes ago that she was terrified of, but now she sees it again and decides to follow it like she was following a spirit animal. Why? But anyway, it does lead her, like, right to this building, which, again, was only, like, a brisk walk away. There's just certain things in the script here that I just don't think worked super well, from some of the dialogue to some of the scenes. Most of them, pretty much all of them, are at the end of the film. Like I said, the first, like, you know, I think it's like 30, 35-ish minutes, where it's the found footage pieces and setting up the story and concept, were really enjoyable. Like, I was drawn into it. But man, once they go off of the tapes and now Mia is about to go to Shelby Oaks, from that point forward, it just gets pretty weak. And since it is so many horror cliches you've seen so many times, even though it's not, like, poorly done, like, it's not, like, terribly executed or anything, it's just, you've seen it so much that it all just becomes meh. It feels like it did a really good job of setting something up that most people will be interested by, but then wasn't able to deliver on the premise super well. Anyway, for Chris Stuckman's directorial debut, I think this is a spirited first attempt with room for improvement. And I hope this isn't one and done. I hope that he directs another feature in the future that learns from some of the mistakes here and makes something that surpasses it. I think there were some good signs for his future as a filmmaker, most of which were showcased in the beginning of this film. It's a mixed bag. There are things to like and there are things to not like. But overall, I give a lot of props to Chris Stuckman for making a fucking movie. It's easy to talk about films, it's hard as fuck to make them. And I think for his first big attempt at it, it is a passionate first attempt. So yeah, anyway, that's really about it. See ya.